After the failure of movies like Terminator Genisys and Dark Fate, the fandom seems to have retroactively evaluated Terminator 3 as a movie that was much better than what people believed. There is some truth to that sentiment because I believe that that film received unnecessary hate and it was not half as bad as people would want you to believe. Hey there, everybody, how's it going? This is John, and you're watching CineMania 24x7, the channel dedicated to movies, music, physical media, books, video games, and pop culture. Yes, Terminator 3 is a movie that I have grown up with all these years, and it was my first Terminator movie when I saw the entire franchise to begin with. And today I'm planning to make a video, or at least tell you my reasons behind what worked with this movie and why this movie is far better than people actually remember. Stay tuned as we're going to get on a very powerful journey as we might end up uncovering the very reason why this film was hated. So without any further delays, let's get into that exciting adventure right now. Terminator 3 as a movie sits at a very different junction as compared to the larger franchise. Now, this is a movie that you can either hate a lot or you can like a lot but cannot ignore it. It has the elements of a very entertaining action movie, but what never worked out in its favor is probably the idea that many people always compared it unfairly with the previous installments, and somehow some of those criticisms are genuine, but the problem is that this movie gets a lot of unfair hate based on these very topics. Today I'm trying to dissect what the Terminator 3 fandom looks like and why exactly people hate this film so much, and why I think it is extremely underrated as well. Please subscribe to my channel so that you can watch more such videos like this coming up every single weekend. So without any further delays, guys, I shall be back. Now, to give you a brief summary of what Terminator 3 as a movie was, this was a film that was the third installment of the long-running Terminator franchise, and it tells the story of John Connor, who has now become a drifter because he does not have the same destiny that he was supposed to have in the previous movies, and now he's somewhat of a recluse, living off the grid, still fearing the idea that Judgment Day is not yet over, and his worst fear comes true when Skynet does send a female Terminator into the timeline of John Connor being an adult, and somehow his future wife, a lot of other people, and Skynet get embroiled, all culminating to one definitive ending which still holds up after 23 years of the film's initial release. The movie had a lot of things. John Connor was now no longer the leader that he was supposed to be, so he's a recluse. That sort of arc is very tough to digest, but yes, it is actually sensible given the idea that the previous movie ended things on such a good note. Second, the idea that Judgment Day is inevitable as a concept was very well explored in the movie, which might not sound very plausible to the fans of the previous two films, but nonetheless, the idea that Judgment Day cannot be averted and you can only postpone the events of that particular incident is really shocking, given the idea that the film managed to show us so much along the lines of action and of course the thematic weight in the previous installment. This installment flips it all over and tells you that you are not supposed to be actually leading the war into its end, but actually surviving it first so that you then lead the survivors into victory. Very difficult to digest as a movie, but yeah, it had great themes, but there were problems in bits and places. I will get into that in the next couple of sections, but if you ask me, this is the summary of Terminator 3. A well-made movie, not exactly as good as the prequels, but still having a killer premise, good action sequences, and a fantastic ending. Ask me about the actors in the movie, I can definitely tell you Nick Stahl as a performer was awesome. The whole idea of him being a very big recluse now and not having half the bravado or the gravitas that Edward Furlong had in the previous movie, now that is very difficult. Although I have some problems adjusting to the idea that Nick Stahl is going to be the future version, or is the future version of Edward Furlong. Still a little beyond me, but okay, let's accept that. There is Claire Danes, who's playing the character of Kate Brewster, who happens to be his wife, who is mentioned again in the movie and of course shown throughout the film as a main character this time. There's also T850, the T850 character, which is another reiteration of the previous Terminator, but this time it has a history associated because on July 4th, 2032, John Connor was assassinated by this very same robot, and his wife caught him and reprogrammed him and essentially got him back into time. So that's again a different game altogether. The TX particularly, if I ask you about the TX, What do you think about this? In my understanding, the TX is a very cunning character, a character that can use its traits in the best ways possible. It's far more lethal than the previous Terminators, although in some places I can say that it does not have the threat or the staying power of the T1000 from the previous movie, but it does have a lot of elements that were genuinely well made, and the actress who played the role, hats off to her. She did it really well, and I cannot imagine any other person taking that role and doing that sort of a stuff in this particular film. Nonetheless, the actors do their job well, and I do understand parts and bits of the acting doesn't make sense anymore because the movie has a tonality problem, which I will discuss in the next section. But yeah, if you ask me, Terminator 3 has solid performances, and Nick Stahl shines in the role along with Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's good as always as the iconic machine from the future. The point of tonality around here, if you would remember the first sequence when the Terminator comes back from the future, you will essentially see that they repeated the exact same scene that you saw in the second Terminator film, and now, albeit it's a different one, little different, but then it becomes a little comedic as well. He's wearing different kind of glasses, he's asking people to talk to the hand and stuff like that. That wasn't exactly something you'd otherwise expect out of a film which has not been known for these kind of things. It's mostly a very serious kind of movie where you see people pass away, get bombarded, get bumped off because a machine from the future is behind you. Now, this as a thing might not click well with a lot of fans of the previous movies, and I can kind of understand why people were a little pissed when Terminator 3 hit theaters, because James Cameron and his way of direction is vastly different from Jonathan Mostow. And Jonathan Mostow, if I remember, he also made a movie called U571, which I have seen 3 years back, but I haven't seen it ever since. Got to see that once as well. Now, Jonathan Mostow as a director is no James Cameron. We know that. No questions on that. But does this movie deserve half the hate because it has a different director? Not really, if you ask me. This movie could have been much better in places. Yes, the tonality problems could have been fixed. They did not need to have unintentional comedy involved in the movie. Absolutely correct. But does this movie deserve a lot of hate that's coming its way? Not quite. I still believe this is one of the better installments considering what came after these particular films. So yeah, that's all about tonality. This movie has a confusing sense of tone, and sometimes it's glaringly obvious, but the rest of the time it just does the part very, very, very well. As compared to the other installments of the franchise that came after Terminator 3, Terminator 3 at least had great action sequences. I still imagine the idea that they made some of the best action sequences in the industry by using practical effects and CGI. There are also behind the scenes moments of the movie where you see Arnold is having a lot of fun with the female character, the female Terminator. They have a great chemistry together, they're dancing around in places. There is also good evidence of that entire crane sequence where Arnold was actually crashed into a building or something like that. They destroyed an entire set for it. Very, very good film if you ask me in that perspective, because action in the movie is genuinely better than a lot of installments that came after this. Is it better than T1 and T2? I wouldn't say so, but it's almost on the same level as those previous movies because the action feels real. The destruction that you see on screen is absolutely real, and that itself makes me give full marks on the action part, because none of the movies ever nailed the action in the installments further since. Although we could make a separate argument about Terminator Salvation someday, but Genisys and Dark Fate are certainly not the best kind of movies when you're talking about this particular thing, just for instance. Now, I do agree that parts and bits of the criticism for the movie is absolutely valid, and I agree with that. The reason being that Jonathan Mostow is no James Cameron. The idea that the movie has a very 2000s feel to it. You see brown colors and very dull colors that do not otherwise reflect the cool and the very, cyberpunkish nature of the previous movie, because if you remember, the color palettes in the previous Terminator movie were largely different, and they were far more bluish in color as opposed to this movie, where almost every single color is more like a beige or a gold or a brown for that matter. Even the clothes that the characters are wearing are mostly dull, and I understand why they are doing that. Genuinely speaking though, that isn't exactly a huge problem in my understanding, but still if you look at it as a problem, fine, completely up to you. Then again, the idea that some of the action sequences have not aged well because the CGI in some places is not very accurate and up to the mark, again, time has already had its effect on the movie, and I believe that it isn't a huge reason why you should be actually doing that sort of thing. But yeah, still, if you can consider that. So that would bring me to the end of the point about the negatives. I do agree that some parts of the movie have not aged well, but it doesn't deserve half the hate that it actually is getting all this while. In my understanding, this movie has problems. The director is not exactly as competent as the previous one. The action sequences in places haven't aged well. The humor doesn't land well. There are tonality inconsistencies that do not hold up well. The concept of the movie could have been handled better. Absolutely correct. But the ending that they had was really a compensation for the kind of, bad writing that they had in the film. But nonetheless, this was an enjoyable movie. Now we'll get to the conclusion section of the video. Personally, Terminator 3 was my first Terminator film, and it is only in the reverse order of films that I actually saw the entire saga as well. That's the reason I'd say that Terminator 3 is not a bad movie. The problem is that the movie did not have the scale, or let's say the reason to justify its existence beyond T2, at least in a way that the audience and the fans would actually feel validated, or let's say they would feel okay that this is a movie that can exist beyond the James Cameron saga as well. Now, any other movie that came after this film was not exactly a huge hit in any way. Salvation bombed, Genisys bombed, Dark Fate is a woke piece of crap that I do not want to talk about on my channel because we don't do woke movies here. But absolutely, in my understanding, Terminator 3 has had problems, but it does not deserve any kind of hatred. Like I have been telling you this entire video, it does not deserve half the hatred that it gets all the time. This movie was much different than the James Cameron films. It had great action, and who can ever forget that scene where Skynet is going online and just eliminating people one by one. That scene is still one of the most scariest things I've ever seen on screen, if you ask me. This is an event that was only covered in the previous movies through exposition, but this is the first time you see the system getting online and then launching an attack on humans. That was a brilliant moment. The ending, of course, a very well mention goes to that as well. The idea that they managed to show that John Connor and Kate Brewster are only going to survive the events of the movie, only to be rallying the remaining humanity, or let's say the remnants of humanity, into victory. Bittersweet moment. And the idea that the world is being nuked left and right, missiles are falling here and there, everybody is just obliterated. That is a very sad moment to look at. Marco Beltrami's score probably has to be the best highlight about this movie when it comes to the soundtrack part of things. And I also like Marco Beltrami from Logan as well, because I believe he was the one who was also doing the soundtrack for Logan. Yes. So that's the entire video for the day, guys. Tell me down in the comment section below if you like Terminator 3 and you feel this was actually too harsh that people treat the movie that way. Please keep buying films on physical media. This is my DVD to Transformers Age of Extinction. Couldn't get any happier. That's the best and the most amazing way to protect movies for long. Stay safe, bye bye, and Godspeed.